All right. Good morning, colleagues, and greetings to all from different places. Thank you so much for joining in today's webinar, where we are looking into the issues to do with climate smart agriculture for food security, and with the main objectives of trying to highlight the role of climate smart agriculture in achieving food security, and also the issues of raising awareness with regards to climate smart agriculture. So we're looking into the practice. What are the practical implications, and how best can this be amplified in smallholder farming? And then the issues to do with policies and financing to ensure that this is adopted, and we perhaps can realize sustainability. And lastly, the issue to do with collaboration, because it is always a good thing to do this in a collaborative action to ensure that we maximize the benefits thereof, and also to promote nutrition and sustainable food systems. So with this in mind, today we are looking forward to an insightful webinar where we have 3 presenters. We are happy today that we have presenters that cut across fields and expertise, where we are bridging from academia to our social entrepreneur and farmer, and then issues to do with policy and financing. That being said, allow me to present to you our first speaker, who is Prof. Mohammed from the University of Pretoria. He is in the Department of Consumer and Food Sciences, and an accomplished food scientist whose research focuses on starch modification, biopolymers, functional foods, and the use of indigenous African crops to improve nutrition and food security. He aims to develop healthier, sustainable, and nutrient-rich foods which are tailored to African context, and contributing to the fight against diet-related diseases and promoting climate-resilient food systems. Our prof is published extensively in leading journals, and is also recognized by the National Research Foundation as an established researcher, and is affiliated with the DST NRF Center of Excellence for Food security. So through his innovation, research, and academic leadership, he continues to advance the field of food science and its role in achieving sustainable development across the continents. So with this, we would like to leave time to him to give us a talk today. And Prof, you may also, thank you so much for showing your video. At least our audience will get to see the presenter and sharing your work, so that he can give a talk to us on the role and barriers of climate smart agriculture adoption in achieving food security and the sustainable development goal too. So over to you, Prof. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Can you see my screen, firstly?
Yes, Prof, I can see it, and
Okay.
yes, it's
Okay.
in the presentation mode.
Presentation mode. Okay, thank you. Good morning,
Thank you,
everyone,
Prof.
and thank you for the introduction, and thank you, ASSAf, for the opportunity to just talk a little bit today about climate smart agriculture. But I will bring a little bit my expertise in the discussion. I will look to see how we can from fork to farm innovation, and I will talk a lot about farm to fork, but I changed around from fork to fork innovation. Okay, very, very important. I think we talk about zero hunger. I think it's very important when we talk about zero hunger, it really focuses on ensuring everyone has access to safe, nutritious food while promoting sustainable agricultural practices. And what I want to also show here, just to see, I mean, the zero hunger, it's really show about food, a ready to eat or a food on the table or on the plate that one can eat. And why zero hunger is important, perhaps other speakers will also talk about it. If you look at the hunger map, especially for Africa here, you can see the darker the color, the more problematic it is in terms of the hunger, in terms of total population. And you can see in Africa here, it's quite prominent compared to the Western world or the Americas. But Africa, we are in problems in terms of a lot of people is facing hunger. Like over 8.2%, more than 650 million face hunger, 20%, nearly 2.3 billion were moderately or severe food insecure. Nearly 2 billion people regular access doesn't have regular access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. And stunting globally is about 23.2%, and wasting is 6.6%. Stunting is as a result of child malnutrition, and wasting shows very severe child malnutrition. Okay, so these are some of statistics, and we talk about zero hunger. And we talk about climate smart agriculture. Again, I'm a food scientist, but I'm not an expert in plant production or animal production, but we know a little bit about it. So this is, when we talk about climate smart agriculture, this was published by the Summit organization and shows some of the aspects which I'm sure some other speakers will talk about. Really, timely planting is important, mechanization is important to address labor shortage. Specific site, very important so that they can have extension offices to come and talk to the farmers. Need for fertilization, chemical or organic. I think we will talk about it, or I mean, I'm sure other speakers will talk about it. Resilient to stress tolerant seed, crop variety choice, which is drought tolerant. That's very important in terms of when we talk about climate smart agriculture or climate smart crop. The variety which is drought tolerant is very, very important. And legume intercropping is very important because of legume crop provide soil fertility in terms of providing nitrogen to the soil. There should be integrated pest management, and some people talk about agroforestry. And some of the thing that is happening is a lot. There is a lot of research done in terms of soil fertility, because that's for lots of climate smart agriculture seems to be one of the most important aspect. And where we work a lot is slow release of organic fertilizers and soil microbiomes. For example, where what we do, we look at plant residues and how we can encapsulate organic fertilizers and afterwards spray it with soil microbiome, which is microbes, to enhance soil fertility. And this is one of the innovation that quite a few people around the world are working on. And we talk about agricultural production challenges that we look at especially at Center of Excellence in Food Security, is really looking at the challenges that we are aware of is climate variability, where drought is there and heavy rainfalls that can affect crops. There is land degradation, so it's important to improve the land. Small and medium enterprises, they have limited advantage compared to big corporation or big farmers. There is limited infrastructure investment, reliance on rain-fed agriculture, so there is no proper irrigation, lower productivity, and there's inadequate inputs, and there's diseases also. And one thing that I forgot what's called to mention here is really the value chain addition that happen after harvesting, which is limited. So this is more or less, we talk about zero hunger and climate smart agriculture. And I want to shift a little bit more from agricultural, so climate smart agriculture, especially the upstream, we mostly produce agricultural produce. And if you talk about zero hunger, you remember I mentioned about what represents zero hunger is the food that we eat. So how, for example, also one need to realize how agricultural produce become food. Okay, and when we talk about climate smart agriculture, it forms only part of a sustainable food system, but it's one of the important part of the core food system. And what we have here is one of the modified in terms of food system here, especially when we look at sustainability. We got the drivers on top, okay, and then we got the food system outcome on top, and one is really food and nutrition security and health. And beside that, when we look at the transformed food system or inclusive transformed food system, there should be inclusivity. The balance in terms of land or territorial is important. Livelihood is also one of the most important aspects to really can have an impact on food security or zero hunger and environment sustainability. Okay, the drivers is quite a lot historical. We know a lot in South Africa how our historical background affect agriculture, demographic, environmental, sociocultural, political, economic, and technical or technological. I should admit, being a food scientist, I work mostly in the technical aspect and of food and other players take it further. And where one can really impact in terms of innovation or other aspect is in the food system, where you can have very immediate impact or short-term impact compared to the food system outcome is more as a long-term impact and which is not within our control. Whereas here at the core food system, we can have impact which is within our control. And if you look at food supply here, there is obtaining the input, agricultural input, or if you think about in food production, where you can produce the agricultural produce, okay, where you can distribute it and it goes to supermarket and people take it and cook it at home and eat it. Or food production also means value addition to these food, okay, and then you can have a ready to eat food at home, especially in the lifestyle that happening, especially in urban and semi-urban areas where time is limited after a long day of work to really produce to take like 2 3 hours to cook. That can be quite daunting, so people like to see things that is like semi-cooked or ready to eat or ready to consume or ready to prepare. Okay, very important is really managing loss and waste in the food system. So the idea here that I want to show here is that we don't eat agricultural produce, we eat food. Okay, so when we eat food at home, that has impact on zero hunger or well-being or even nutri-food and nutrition security. So if you look at the plate here, what is required on the plate? Okay, so this is the healthy plate that is recommended. Half is vegetable that contribute a lot of fiber, 1/4 is protein, and 1/4 is starch. Okay, so if you think about a diet like that, which is a healthy plate, okay, but how many can afford such a healthy plate? I think we need to ask our question at this question. And what should be the on the plate? This is an ideal situation, and what we really live in is really a real world. Okay, and the real world really depend on the taste. People like certain food and people doesn't like certain food. Affordability and convenience, for me these are the three factors, one of the three factors which are important that can impact on what we eat at home. Okay, this is the ideal plate, and if you look at the real plate, what people like, a breakfast, this is what we are going to have: a breakfast with milk and a breakfast cereal in the morning, because we can't really can prepare nice breakfast. Maybe only on Sundays people prepare nice breakfast, but on a daily it might be difficult. Okay, so breakfast cereal is very good, but lots of people will say, oh, it contains a lot of sugar that impact on the health. Okay, if you can see here, especially our youngsters, for quick thing, they will have slab chips with viennas and bread to eat. Here also lots of calories instead of a lot of protein, or there is not a lot of fiber. Okay, and if you want to treat ourselves, we will go to a fast food again to buy a burger, french fries, and a cold drink. Again, it's more calorie dense, energy dense rather than nutrient dense. Okay, and somebody from maybe from a poor communities that cannot afford to buy a lot of food and bring home, they will the monthly grocery will be mostly maybe or weekly grocery will be pap, tomatoes, onions, and oil, and this is sometimes what they can afford at home. Okay, again here it's mostly calorie dense rather than, and there is hardly any protein there. So if you think about that, so this is where the food that we are having, I mean, really causing this triple burden of malnutrition. And I'm talking in the case of South Africa now, where protein, energy, malnutrition is quite common, and nearly we have a 30% stunting rate in our kids under 5 years old. We also have diet-related non-communicable diseases like diabetes, and overweight and obesity, especially among ladies, is almost over 60%. We also have a micronutrient deficiency, especially vitamin A, zinc, and iron. So what we call this triple burden of malnutrition. And one of the main causes is low nutrients or energy dense food compared to nutrient dense food. Okay. The other thing is that, so what we, in terms of technology, what we develop a lot of food and food ingredient. And we talk about something like smart, which is safe, marketable, affordable, ready to eat, and tasty. And also we look at environment sustainability here in terms of how we reduce waste, okay, in terms of food, plastic, chemical waste, as well as how we reduce energy consumption. Okay. And what in terms of technology, we believe a lot in neglected and underutilized species and orphan crops that can bring in terms of this climate smart agriculture and downstream in terms of processing or value addition into food that is convenient, tasty, and affordable. And if we think about the traditional knowledge, ambassadors of the culture and identities, that's a very important for neglected and underutilized plant species or orphan crops. If you think about quinoa and Andean culture, it has been a lot in the media for the last 10 to 15, 20 years, I will say. Okay, quinoa nowadays is a well-known seed, okay, or crop that is widely used around the world. But I mean, if you think about 25, 30 years old, this was only Latin America that they used to have it there. Okay, so we also want to bring in some of our indigenous and orphan crops, just like the success of quinoa. It helps with sustainable livelihood, especially in rural, by rural farmers. And it bringing agricultural biodiversity. I think that is very important. And this is one of the environmental disasters that is happening. We are losing the biodiversity. And most of the crops, if you bring it together, like the legume crops and as well as the cereal crop together, it become more nutritious and less calorie dense. It's more climate resilient and adaptable. And it's also relevant to local consumption and production system, and especially local communities. They want to are familiar to certain types of crops and certain types of food. And it's also part of global transformation of food system. However, we know there is a huge gap and limited technology or innovation happening in this area. So this is where we want to really help. And especially this is perhaps where small-scale farmers can make a difference in terms of their livelihood. And in terms of neglected and underutilized plant species, I just want to say I like to differentiate it into two. Some are still wild, which is not really cultivated or not really domesticated or cultivated at commercial level. Especially we have one which is known as tuber cowpea here, which is similar to other cowpea, which can be eaten as vegetable grain, tuber, and dense food. We also have things like eaten as marama, okay, which can be grown in the Kalahari. I think that one of the best crop that is really show the climate adaptation. Okay, we got bambara and we got finger millet. Okay, so these are some of the crops I will try to differentiate, like Bambara and finger millet are domesticated compared to wild one. And how can we, for example, bring the wild one into the domestication? And how this domesticated one, which doesn't have a proper value chain or proper what's called in terms of the agricultural produce, a proper marketing, how can you bring it more to the consumers? And can we also add value to it? Okay, and some of the selected crop that we work also is Bambara groundnut. I talk about it, cowpea. We also used to work on faba bean with other agricultural, other African countries. We work on orange fresh sweet potato. We work on banana, especially in other African countries, finger millet, sorghum, especially maize that are mostly some of the local varieties that are more climate adapted to drought, amaranth and teff also we work. So these are the crop that we work with, which is mostly climate smart, except maize, but some of the maize varieties are climate smart. And maize is still very important in the South African context for food security. So I will just mention one, two now of innovation or problem solving that we are doing with these crops. Like some of the things that we have, for example, you will know we eat a lot of pap in South Africa, which is maize based. Okay, and sometimes in poorer household, they don't have other things to give as complementary food. And a child, especially when they're about 6 months old, they don't have a proper oral processing capability, which means that their mouth doesn't move that much to form a bolus. So they are only at that stage, they can only suckle because they've been drinking milk. For example, the upper palate is flat, they can't form a bolus because their lower jaw can't move sideways. And you will see that if you feed the child pap, they won't eat it unless if we dilute it with water more to make it very watery. So watery means you are diluting energy and the protein is not a good quality protein there. Okay, so this is what we found. Most of the cereal, even some of the legume grain, when we make it into a porridge, the viscosity is quite high. And one of the most crop that has really very good what's called viscosity, and you can go up to 20 to 25% solid, okay, is a really orange fresh sweet potato. And it is being grown a lot as a climate smart crop. Okay, and we work on technologies, very simple technologies like microwave. If there is a way you can microwave your pap and then afterwards cook it, and then this reduce the viscosity dramatically, and then you can increase the density in terms of the nutrient density that you have here. Okay, the other thing that we've done, I think, in terms of I mean, if you think about orange plus sweet potato here, it's only available a certain period of the year. And to make it available the whole year, one can make sweet potato powder, and then you can make into a porridge. But powder means you dry it. Okay, and if you use oven drying, you lose up to 50% of the beta carotene, and beta carotene is important as a provitamin A. And this is what we have orange fresh sweet potato to provide mostly beta carotene that is converted to vitamin A to correct the micronutrient deficiency. And if you use microwave and infrared again, we can retain up to 90% of the beta carotene when you're drying the fresh orange fresh sweet potato. Okay. Another thing that we are doing, because sometimes it's energy dense or it's that cereal grain, cereal flours especially, it digests very fast and increase, they are mostly what we call high glycemic index food. So what we are doing here within the Center of Excellence Food Security and at the University of Pretoria, we work with cereal grain and how to make it lower starch digestible so that it can slowly release the glucose into the bloodstream, as well as the remaining starch that is not digested, which is resistant starch. It can be used for colonic fermentation, so it acting as a prebiotic for your good microbiome. So we work with maize meal, we modify it, and we find out we can produce up to 30% resistant starch, and we show that it has a prebiotic effect. And now we are trying to work the same with an more indigenous crop, which is sorghum flour. Here you can see some of the results that we have. Firstly, the red one here is bread, which is high glycemic index. Okay, and the blue one here is the sorghum grain, which is the control. But if you modify it, okay, simple modification, you just add some tannin there, you can see the huge difference here in terms of how it release, especially the first 60 minutes, okay, and then how even it produces a lot of resistant starch here, okay, which is can be beneficial, especially as a diabetic food. Obviously, one need to do more in vivo work to really confirm these results. This is mostly in vitro work. We work a lot also in Marama bean. We have to valorize it. Remember, I told you it grows in the Kalahari. We it produces tubers and also produce some seeds here. Okay, we worked on the seeds here. It contains starch and non-starch polysaccharides, especially oligosaccharide that can be beneficial for the gut microbiome. And we also characterize that the starch there, it's very similar to cassava that has potential. Okay, we also work in terms of extracting the protein here. You will see the protein here. This is, and we try to see whether it can be used to make bread. And if you think about here, we try to add it to cassava starch here, that we can make a completely gluten-free bread. Okay, and you can see here, this is wheat. To produce wheat bread, it should form a bubble so that it can rise. And this is wheat, and this is the others are with marama protein concentrate, and we manage to produce a bubble. And if you just only use cassava starch or use sorghum flour, you will never be able to produce the bubble. So marama has a very big potential, especially the protein, to replace gluten. And gluten alternative is in high demand, especially in Europe. So this can create an industry there. And although it produced this bubble were not very good quality. The bread was still needs some work to be done. So here, what this graph is showing, this is the graph, in terms of the quality, in terms of the dough quality of vital gluten. Okay, and we want to, and this is the control of marama protein. So what we did, we modified the protein to make it similar to vital gluten, even better. What we talk about the viscoelastic, so it should be able to stretch, okay, so that it can form the bubble, and the bubble doesn't collapse when we're making bread. Just something. And some other novel use of smart crops that we are doing so that there can be demand for the farmers. We are looking at making nanofibers, okay, from protein isolate. For example, these are caffeine, sorghum protein, soy protein isolate, which is called standard. Okay, we work with cowpea and marama protein isolate. You can see we have successfully made nanofibers with it. And these nanofibers is quite an expensive ingredient, what's called material that can be used in a lot of application like scaffold for medical application. Okay. In terms of environmental impact, we work a lot in terms of applying circular economy, especially in the climate smart crop. Okay. Um, what we've done here, we've used, for example, a cowpea side stream. Cowpea side stream means after harvesting the cowpea grain, whatever is left in the field, we've used it, we mill it into a very like less than 1 millimeter, what's called size uh, powder, if you want to say, okay, and we've added it to some other biodegradable material up to 30%. So it can be used as a filler for biodegradable plastic. So this is plastic that we made, sheets, okay, as well as these are more or less like flexible material that can be used, for example, to make a tray, to make a chair, in terms of biodegradable plastic material. Okay, we also work in terms of some of the nanomaterial that we extracted from grains, and it can be used in biopackaging material. That's to reduce, to have a positive environmental impact. And we try to work in terms of the circular economy, and that's important, I think, for small scale farmers and food manufacturers. Okay, these are some of the things that I want to just show here. Okay, just as a summary, I just want to say that when we talk about climate smart agriculture, people always talk about the upstream and producing and agricultural produce. And one need to realize, from the agricultural produce to food, there is always this downstream. And we mostly consume food rather than agricultural produce. I think this downstream part, I think one need to have it more on the agenda in terms of policy, and even the small scale farmers should already think about this when they are planting their crops. Okay, I just wanted to thank you very much for opportunity, and I hope I've contributed a little bit in the discussion today from a technology or innovation point of view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for a very insightful presentation. A lot of knowledge shared, and it's really appreciated. Questions, I see they are coming through. Thank you, colleagues, for the questions. We'll have a time for responses at the end of the 3 presentations. So may the questions keep coming through the chat platform. Now would like to call upon our second presenter, who is Ms. Nomhle Nhlapo, who is a passionate farmer and social entrepreneur, is exhibited by starting with a 2.4 hectare land to currently 8 hectares. So Nomhle, you may show your video so that audience can see you, and also while I'm introducing you, you'll be sharing your presentation. So Nomhle began a farming journey in 2018 with a 2.84 hectare smallholding in Edicom, like I indicated before. She paused her profit endeavors in 2022 to pursue a full-time master's program at the University of Pretoria, where she researched on viable and innovative funding models for small-scale farmers. Nomhle's vision is to create thriving, self-sufficient farming communities that embrace innovation, collaboration, and climate-smart practices in line with Sustainable Development Goals 3 and 9. So this is key to the SDG 2, which we are focusing on today. So in 2024, Nomhle was farming on 8 hectares in the Vaal, and she's also a bakery owner. She's managing director of a research fund and an advisor to the UCRIS Metabolic Psychiatric Hub. So we would like to leave this 25 minutes to her to give us a talk on climate smart agriculture practices that are applicable to smallholder farmers. Over to you, Nomhle.
All right, thank you very much. I'll just share my slides now. Just a moment.
It's okay, thank you.
Okay, here we go. Right, thank you very much for this opportunity, both to ASSAf and their staff. My name is Nomhle Nhlapo, and I refer to myself as a serial entrepreneur. One of the hats that I wear since 2018 is as a farmer. As you've heard, I've been farming since 2018. I'm a vegetable farmer, specifically okra. And So in farming, one of the things that you quickly learn is that you need to be friendly and social with your neighbors. And perhaps cordial is the better word of these. You need to be cordial with your neighbors. As an example, when I moved into my plot in Endicott, I was farming on 2.4 hectares at that point. My neighbors came out to greet me. And as soon as they saw me, the questions are, how are you? Where are you from? Have you also met? And they mentioned another neighbor. But the other question that they ask you is, what are you planning on growing in this area? And so, but as a small scale farmer, the questions that you will ask your colleagues include, where do we find tractors around here? Where are the laborers here? But a question that you hardly anticipate that you'll be asking is, when exactly do we put seed to the ground? And that's an important one. It sort of sets you off in the trajectory of a climate smart agriculture process within your farm. And so you begin to speak with established farmers, and they tell you, for an example, that we used to put seed here on the 18th of September, as an example. But in recent years, we've had to start putting seed around the 24th of September. And so I joke, perhaps not so much as a joke, but really, I say there are two things that farmers are convinced of. Firstly, about prayer. You will be praying about your farming, because once you've put seed, you're like, oh, please, seed, just grow. While the seed is busy growing, you're busy here talking to your customers and saying, please don't drop me. So that's the first one. But the second one is the awareness of climate change as a farmer, because like I've said, the older farmers will tell you that we used to put seed around the 18th of September, but we've recognized that we've had to change and move the dates around. So those are some of the two things that farmers are sort of aware of. Climate change also having a bigger impact on us as small scale farmers because of the lack of resources that are needed for us to be able to change fast enough, and also the bit about education, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit further. And so from those conversations, those early conversations, you learn as a small scale farmer that the issue of climate is really sitting right there in front of you. And so that is how I also joined this conversation around climate change. My intention today is to share my story, and then through this, encourage other small-scale farmers to incorporate climate-smart agricultural practices. And secondly, my intention today is to revive in business and in academia a drive and a commitment to assist small-scale farmers in adopting sustainable farming practices. And all of these images that I'm sharing today, they are from my farm. Let me see the previous one. I like this one. This little chap was sleeping on the farm while the parents were working on the farm. One of my favorite pictures. Right. So, and then just to continue, in 2021, I went to Buhle Farmers Academy. That is, as you're approaching Mpumalanga, in an area called Damas. I highly recommend them. This is not an advert. I'm not paid to say this, but they come highly recommended. I went there to fine tune my skills, because at the point farming was showing me flames, right? So I wanted to go there and learn some more. And when you get there, I began to appreciate how deep our passion is as small scale farmers, not only for contributing towards food security, but also around the question of climate change, right? So we want to incorporate climate smart agriculture. But as you're learning about these practices, one of the feedback that you will get from the lecturers is that this type of farming is good for the environment, but it might sort of pop you out of market accessibility, because your products will become more expensive, or rather it will be difficult also to incorporate into your farm, just because of the upfront cost that you will sustain as a result. And just as an example, last week It's as if a farmer knew that I would be presenting. He contacted me and he wanted to sell me strawberries. So as you know, I said that I'm a cereal farmer, and so I ran a bakery. And he was contacted me because he wanted to sell me some strawberries. I was really happy listening to him. And then he mentioned that the strawberries are organic. And at that point, my mind is already accelerating to how much are these strawberries? And when he told me the price, they were 4 times more expensive than the ones at the City Deep Market, which is where I buy a lot of my stuff. So of those farmers who are able and they're willing and brave enough to adopt smart practices, they are able to compete in the market because of prices. Like I've said, the farmer that I was talking to, his strawberries were 4 times more expensive than the strawberries that I would ordinarily buy. And so here are the things that I would recommend, because I have done them and I incorporate them in my practice. The first one is the issue of empowerment. It is empowering myself as a farmer. Like I said, I went to Buhle Farmers Academy. You can go to an institution that is closer to you to learn the practice of climate smart agriculture. Buhle Farmers Academy, they're about 3,000 Rand for a 3-month course. This includes meals and accommodation. And then after this, and this one I have to emphasize, you have this task of empowering your staff at the farm. So I didn't have money to take my employees to go and train at this place. However, it was important for me to get buy-in from my staff in order for me to be able to implement this successfully. So let me make an example. I work with Samuel. Samuel still believes that women should not touch tomatoes when it comes to farming because they might rot on the plot. So you can imagine that the place from where I need to take him and put him in order for us to be able to incorporate climate smart agriculture. And so I highly encourage that once you as a farm owner have learned the importance of certain practices, you take the time out to then go out and educate your staff. And I can tell you that, sometimes they were so not impressed with the suggestions that I had made that I would see the rest of the ladies who were helping at the farm. I had 10 ladies helping me with as we were transitioning at that point. And you could just see as I'm walking past that the looks that they're giving me, they're not very impressed with what we are doing. So that there's the empowerment part, because as you implement, you're going to make mistakes. There are going to be things that go wrong. You need your staff to have bought into the idea that you have in your mind so that you're able to implement it correctly. Because a lot of them have worked on farms and they're not climate smart at all. So they know the way that it's conventionally done. And what you're asking them to do, they don't want to do because there are so many mistakes that are involved with this. So I've spoken about the bit on the empowerment, then there's the education. So at this point, I'd just like to make an example with a farmer friend of mine who she decided that she's going to go and collect grass cuttings. So after government has cleared the sides of the freeways and everything, she went there, collected all of that grass and took it to her farm to use as mulch. And to say that her farmers were upset is an understatement. However, we had to keep in touch to provide each other support so that she could implement successfully. And then in the next season, she got in touch with me again and she said, "You won't believe the weeds that I have here." And her employees were not impressed with what had happened at that point. So I'm just emphasizing the importance of getting the buy-in from your employees, because the new way, although it's going to work in the long run, initially it's going to provide you with a lot of hassles. And so having your employer buy in ensures that next time when the weeds are overwhelming you, you can laugh about it with your employees. There's going to be some tension, but you can all learn and grow from it and improve. And then on the issue of crop rotation, this one seems obvious, obviously, to a lot of farmers. However, until you start the practice of farming. So what tends to happen is you farm and then you learn, oh, tomatoes tend to do really well in the market, but also do bell peppers. Now you're being called to do crop rotation on your farm. However, you have found this produce that brings you in money. And so you need to commit to the practice of good agriculture. And that is all about, at this point, referring to crop rotation. As I have said, I'm in the okra farming space. However, I've been forced to also incorporate things such as squash, spinach at intervals to limit pests, right? And to help the soil to regenerate. Those are some of the benefits of crop rotation. So this also lowers the need for pesticides and your need for synthetic fertilizers. It is a lot of work. I'll be the first to admit it. However, it is important that we do it. For an example, I also started collecting cow dung and chicken manure as well. Cow dung, you need to fertilize today, but you need to, at the point that you collect it, it has to stay on your plot for a period of time so that it can ferment, or at the point where you're collecting the chicken manure, it needs to sit on your plot so that you are sure that the compounds have broken down, so that when you are using the chicken manure on your farm, it doesn't burn your plants. When you're using the cow dung, it doesn't now bring a lot of weeds. You could be bringing the cow dung this year and only using it next year. Chicken manure is a bit easier to work with. You bring it in about three months or so, it's ready for use. So those are some of the things that make agriculture, especially as a small scale farmer, those are some of the things that make it a bit tough. And so it becomes important to highlight that incorporating climate smart agriculture is not a 100-meter race. It is rather a marathon. And so you might move from flood irrigation this year, right, which is a favorite, and then next year you've introduced sprinklers and you're using substantially less water. But in the third year, you find that you're ready to now bring drip irrigation. I must confess, I'm not at the level where I'm using drip irrigation just yet, but it's a process. You make progress towards the vision, the ideal self that you see yourself as being. Another one, and this one is a tough one, is only grow produce that you can sell, preferably produce that you have already sold. In my first year, I'll confess, I grew watermelon that I had to plow back into the soil. And this happens a lot, unfortunately. And then last year I decided, you know what, I need education again. And so I went and I did a master's with a focus on investigating on ways to find small scale farmers. And in the conversations with our small scale farmers, I learned that a lot of us, in fact, I can say all of the farmers that I spoke with, we are not expecting handouts. We want to be empowered. We want to be included. And with that, I'd like to just highlight some of the barriers that we face. It's the barrier to funding, obviously the market access, like I made an example with the strawberry farmer who now finds himself having the strawberries at hand, but no market way to sell them. We need help with unifying our voices as farmers. I've seen in the comment section, somebody's already saying, hey guys, let's connect. Very, very important. We need to organize ourselves. And also then it's access to training in our languages, in our indigenous languages. Very, very interesting. As we begin to engage with our small scale farmers, you begin to discover that English is not a primary language for a lot of us. We might be able to converse, maybe socially, but certainly not for research and training purposes. So we need to make these materials available in our languages. And so as I stated when I started, I want to revive in business and in academia a drive and a commitment to assist small-scale farmers in adopting sustainable farming practices, to encourage our farmers to incorporate climate smart agriculture, and then also to collaborate. I've already said that we collaborate a lot. When there's a new farmer, we're already out there greeting each other. I would like to encourage us to continue doing so. And this is across whether you're doing fruit farming, whether you're doing vegetables, whether you're doing animal, chicken, cows, it does not really matter. We need to get ourselves together and talking. And then we also inviting our policymakers to consider us. One of the things that I would like to say, to mention, is that it will be very hard to find solutions for us as small-scale farmers if you're not coming down to our level. This is not an element of delegation or hoping that somebody will speak on our behalf. You need to see what we are doing and how we are doing it in order to be able to formulate solutions that will accommodate us at the size that we are at. Because if you're speaking to a 2.4 hectare farmer and you are coming with a solution that works for a 100 hectare farmer, you're going to lose me. And so in my effort to contribute, I started the Small Scale Farmers of South Africa Association, and I encourage all farmers to also get in touch with me as we engage in this dialogue. So this is me and Samuel, my team. It's a team of two. The other people, they really come as and when needed. At this point, I'd like to say thank you very much. From She Farms, represented by Nomhle Mtapo.
Thank you so much, Nomhle. We really appreciate your presentation, very insightful, and we like the energy, the ambassador in you, and the advocate in you. So I guess your next journey on education is law. So that you fight for us. Thank you so much. As we progress to the next presenter, also against the time, since we're supposed to finish at 11:30, we are looking at collaborative actions, policies, and financing mechanisms that support climate smart agriculture adoption. And we also appreciate Prof. Mohammed for responding to the questions that are raised. It will also help us to save on time. So if there are any questions, even for the next presenter, if you can also respond to the chat, that would be great. Our next presenter is Dr. Mahlane Godfrey Katle, who is a plant pathologist and research coordinator at Grain SA, where he leads national research and technology initiatives to enhance the resilience, productivity, and sustainability of South Africa's grain sector. His work focuses on integrated disease management, climate smart and resilient cropping systems, and the use of biologicals and innovative inputs to reduce the environmental footprint of production. Dr. Katle plays a key role in advancing evidence-based agricultural research and farmer support programs that promote climate-smart practices, including improved soil health management, disease surveillance, and sustainable input. He is a co-director of the National Grain Research Platform, chairs the Research and Technology Working Group of the Agriculture Agro-Processing Master Plan, and contributes to collaborative efforts under the South African Sclerotina Research Network with a PhD in plant pathology from the University of Pretoria. So I guess today is University of Pretoria's day. He also has a background in law and communication science and brings a multidisciplinary perspective that bridges science, policy, and farmer engagement. His current interest lies in strengthening collaborative actions, policies, and financing mechanisms that enable smallholder farmers to adopt climate-smart, sustainable agricultural practices in pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goal 2. Over to you, Doc. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me and can you see the slides?
Yes, Doc, I can see the slides and I can hear you well.
Perfect, thank you. I'm here to represent Grain SA, Grain South Africa, but before I go on to it, I'd like to thank the first two presenters. I've learned so much from you already, and Nomhle, thank you for the work you do. If you see on the slide, I don't know if you can see my arrow, we from Grain SA point of view also, but in terms of grain farmers represent smallholder farmers. And I think the last time we did stats, over 700,000 smallholder farmers. If there are no smallholder farmers in the country, we run immediately into a food insecurity status. So thank you for the work you do. I would also encourage you to get in touch with the likes of GDA, Gauteng Department of Agriculture, as well as organizations like GRENSA that deal with vegetable production as well. So thank you for the work you do. But I'm here to actually speak on behalf of GRENSA, founded in '99. uh, what we do to actually ensure that we have a wide reach to different communities is we've broken ourselves into 33 regions, literally across the country, to ensure proper representation. We represent all farmers, from your commercial to your emerging grain farmers, as well as your developing smallholder farmers. Uh, we have a Bob Cherry that sits in Pumalanga. I'll speak about that later when we look at funding mechanisms that work directly with provincial governments of Limpopo and Pumalanga, and even the grannies that do agriculture. We represent farming communities. We are grain SA, so these are the major crops that we look at. Something that's missing here is lupins, an alternative that we're starting to look carefully into from Western Cape, because we need more alternatives. We need more rotational crops in the ground. How are we able to do or function the way we do? We've broken ourselves into departments or into entities of Grain SA. The one is Pahama Grain Pahama, which is our farmer development wing. Then we have our commercial wing. You guys would have heard of the Nampu show, the biggest agricultural show in the Southern Hemisphere. Normally takes place in around about May of every year. So it happens in Bothaville, so please look out for it and do join. There's a Nampu Park, Nampu brand as well. And there's a Commercial Producers Trust. And this is where I fall under, where research falls under. Why Grain SA? The key thing is to ensure that our farmers are profitable and sustainable. If a farmer can produce and get a maximum profit from his production, it means that he's got enough funds to pay his workers and enough funds to continue producing into the next seasons. And obviously, from a farmer development point of view, we have that research and training and transformation portfolio as well. Why is it important for us to have farmers? Why is it important for us to have the likes of non-clear in these sort of conversations? Grain production is important for food security. South Africans, we live predominantly on grain. And in addition to food, human consumption, grain is also important for animal feed as well. So grain is basically the base of any civilization, and that's why it is important for us to support farming communities. And not only do we ensure food security, we visited a farmer, Mr. Jacob Breitenbach, in the Eastern Free State, together with the MEC about a few months ago, and we just from a Grain SA research point of view wanted to understand what a farmer goes through. And what Mr. Breitenbach says, Godfrey, when it's time for production or different functions of the production processes in the year, I have 150, one farmer, 150 casual workers sit at my gate looking for employment. Knowing the situation that the country sits at in terms of employment, agriculture is important for not only for food security as well as employment. So this is why it's important that we ensure our farmers are well taken care of and supported. From a research point of view, we say profitability, sustainability, global competitiveness. So what are those things that we look out for to ensure that our farmers are well supported? We do research that will help them improve their yields, that will help them protect their crops. We know that inputs are on the rise and quite expensive. Effective use of inputs so that there's minimal input dependency. Soil health, we know our food comes from the soil. We need to be able to take care of it and manage its water and its nutrients, as well as just simply technology integration. So as this conversation goes on, hopefully all of these themes will pop out and you can actually get a feel of who Grain SA is. And at the end of the day, we farm on soils, we depend on the environment, and we come from a country that is very compliant to not only compliant but also participates in international responsibilities of ensuring that the earth is taken care of. So why is it important for us to go into climate smart agriculture? Compliance to global regulations and policies, such as the SDG 2, SDG 13, zero hunger, climate action, economic pressure. I did mention the increase in input costs, so that we need to ensure that the farmer at the least um, use of inputs gets the most return on investment for his work, soil preservation, resilience, as well as market access, compliance with sustainability standards that attracts buyers and investors as well. When we talk climate, when we talk profitability, this is a slide that you will not miss from any of my presentation. South Africa, previously self-sustainable in its wheat production, we've seen a steep decline in wheat production, and with a growing population as well, we've sort of almost depended on 50% of imports to ensure that we meet our local wheat demand. Free State used to be the lead producer of wheat, and has since barely produces 5% of the local wheat demand. What are those reasons that have led to this? Climate is one of them. We've seen shifts in rain patterns. I heard Namkle said the same thing, and profitability shifts. So research focused on certain crops like maize and soybean. As a result, they became a lot more profitable than wheat. And as a result, there was a shift in planting wheat in those areas over other crops as well. So now we only meet half our demand. If you see this climate as well as profitability shift, if it is not well understood or taken care of, the risk remains true for other crops in other areas as well. So a clear and a good understanding of our climate and of our production systems to ensure that our farmers are actually profitable and sustainable. We might see a loss of production in the country, and that's the last thing we want to see with a growing population. Another slide that is never missed from our presentation is, as a country, at the moment we are contributing 50% of these slices that you see here into our local demand. We want to find ourselves where this entire loaf of bread or entire bag of pap or entire whatever grain is produced in the country is basically is produced locally rather than imported. As a research team, I want to share some of the work that we do. It's not just myself. We're a team of 4. And how does a team of 4 get to do so much work or represent the grain industry so well? It's because of this. Central to our how we operate is that we are a coordinating body. So as Grain SA, we do a lot of coordination, but there is a lot of collaboration that we do. We collaborate with multiple funders, whether it's government, trusts, or private industries. And we also collaborate with universities and research institutions to enable us to understand our agricultural landscape so that we can better advise and support our farming communities. So what I'm going to do in the next few slides is go into this theme of climate smart agriculture. So what do we do to ensure that our farmers, once again, are compliant, to ensure that our farmers are competitive, and to ensure that our farmers, once again, remain at the edge of the curve in terms of profitability and sustainability. So as Grain said, let me go back to the slide. We represent our farmers. We engage extensively with our farmers to understand where their sore points is, where their opportunities are, and we then engage with the research institutions like the ARC and the likes, and we bring those problems to the research institutions that will then do the research, and then we communicate it back to the farmers, and that will facilitate that adoption and understanding of the new environment that they are. So the next few slides will focus on these projects that I'm going to highlight. We have long-term trials. It's good for us to be able to see the trajectory of what, how climate, how cultivars, how fertilizers have been impacting production over a long period. So we have quite a few long-term trials, some in the Eastern Free State and that are run by University of Free State, some by University of Pretoria, in collaboration with Potato SA. And what we are quickly starting to see is crop rotation is key in reducing disease pressure. It's also key in maintaining proper soil health, as well as introducing cover crops during production, or for other groups, intercropping also assists with that in maintaining soil health. And because of these trials, we've seen interest from PepsiCo, who've actually invested millions to one of our trials at the University of Free State, where these trials will be used as demonstrations for farmers and funders to come and see what climate smart agriculture entails. And hopefully that will also help facilitation of adoption of these practices. Some other trials that we do is planting window trials. So a collaboration between the ARC, University of Pretoria, and the University of Free State, where in 6 regions we've planted maize now for the last 6 years at different planting dates. And what we've seen is maize planted between, depending on the region, after the 15th of Jan or late December, you can see up to a 50% decline in yields. And you can imagine what that means for profitability purposes as well. So what this also shows is for those who are funders, that if you are going to fund your farmers and you're going to fund them late, after the planting window, you run the risk of making your supported farmers actually lose profitability as well. And not only do you lose yield, there's also a disease severity risk that you actually see. That's the findings that we've seen from these trials. Other trials is we're trying to introduce multiple crops, especially to transformation communities. There's a different cultivar trials that we're running in the Eastern Cape, where we're planting canola, where we're planting sorghum, maize, soybean. Once again, these are demonstration trials for farming communities in the area to see what crops can actually be best suited for their particular region, so that they can actually use it in rotation then with the normal maize that is being planted in the area at the moment. Other projects that are outside field trials, then you have your data science. This is a new project, really coming from the University of Illinois. BFAB, together with Stellenbosch University, kind of jumped onto the bandwagon. Normally, what farmers rely on is a green book or a guide that tells them for a particular region, soil type, you need to plant this much plant population, this much seeding rate, this much fertilizer. But generally, that doesn't take into consideration the rapid change of cultivars that happens. It doesn't take into consideration the rapid change of climate variability. So the data farming intensive management project looks at up to 2,000. Can you believe it? 2,000 replications in a particular farm. But the farmers generally for this type of research need high quality, not high quality, precision agriculture inputs, so that they can actually run all these variable trials. And at the end of the day, that farmer will be able to tell how much for his particular area or particular farm or particular plot, this is the best suited cultivar, this is the best suited planting density, fertilizer rate. That then speaks to his return, maximum return of investment. As I've mentioned, when I say it requires high precision mechanisms, then some of you might wonder that how does that then help a smallholder farmer? At the heart of Grain SA is how do we support our smallholder farming community? So we started to roll out a different function where the researchers of this project are starting to look at if there's a farmer doing this DIFM project in a particular area, how do we leverage the information from his equipment and then share it with farmers in those particular areas so that they might be on timelessly get information so they're better adapted to that particular area once again at a faster rate. So the next project, this is a project once again that we have running with Syngenta, where the focus started in 2016 after the 2016 drought, and we realized we do not have enough drought tolerant cultivars, particularly for smallholder farmers. So what we've done in this project is we've gone into an MOA with Syngenta where we're breeding for drought tolerant hybrids, and we're hoping by next year these drought tolerant hybrids will actually be released at a far reasonable price so that our smallholder farmers can actually be assisted should any further drought issues come up. Other research that we're looking at, soil health indicator. As I said, the soil is where the food comes from. And the idea here is to understand how does microbiology actually help with the resilience of plants. So this is still an ongoing project. So hopefully if we have this discussion next year, I'll have the full full report on it. I heard Prof talk about alternative crops. Sorghum, one of those that we're looking at. Not much research has been done on it. And as a result, it hasn't been whether this is a local, it's an African crop. But when we look at countries like Brazil and Argentina and the USA, they are doing far better with this crop than we are at the moment. And one of the reasons is we have not looked into researching it properly. So what the DSTI together with Glen SA have previously now done is build what we call a sorghum cluster initiative, coordinated by Grain SA, funded by DSTI and TIA. So what we look at here is what are those things that will enable us to grow sorghum profitably and that it's also adopted or well received by the consumer. So we're looking at policy and its competitiveness. Here we're looking at if we can remove VAT like it is removed off maize products, maybe it might make sorghum cheaper. There's a breeding program now happening at the University of Free State as well as UKZN. We're also looking at agro-processing. Prof, I hope you are part of this, Prof. Mohammed. I hope you're part of this cluster. I know the UFS is also part of it. Sorghum is at risk to diseases as well as pests. We're also looking at how do we protect it once again from that, and how do we build its market beyond South African borders and up into the rest of Africa and globally. And hopefully all these initiatives will help actually make sorghum great again in African context. Climate, this is a new project that we've started now with Terraclim. Nomke did say climate is increasingly becoming variable, water scarce. As a result, with the climate being variable, we're seeing unpredictable disease outbreaks, pressure on yields as well. So we have partnered now with Terraclim. They are closely associated with Meteors as where they've put out a weather station across the country. So the idea here is to understand what is the climate, agricultural climate terrain in the country. The second question is are the agricultural climate or agro zones still relevant? And the next thing is what cultivars and what crops are best suited for which area? And that's what we talk about in terms of getting maximum yield and profitability then for our farmers as well. Another new research that we're going to look at is with Prof. Lucy at the University of Pretoria. She's a microbiologist. So what she's going to focus on is she's going to look at the microbiome of resistant crops. So if a plant stays green throughout the year, what is the microbiology that surrounds that crop? And can we isolate those microbiomes and use it to enable other crops, grain crops or vegetable crops, to be drought resilient, as well as be able to grow using the very same microbiology that has been attracted on drought resistant crops. So this stands out to be a really exciting project. Um, we're very closely working closely with ASSAf Research. We recently had a project um, in collaboration with the Netherlands as well. We're going to give feedback or have a workshop on the 20th of November on this. Essentially, the outcomes from this research is to identify key drivers, barriers to adoption, enabling targeted intervention for climate smart conservation agriculture in the country. We need to, at the moment, we sit at 25% adoption. How do we increase this adoption of climate smart agriculture to all the way to 50% by 2030 and maybe even 60 by 2040? And this will be, the insights will be data driven to inform policy recommendation as well as guide future investments for climate smart agriculture. Now we're heading towards the end, Ruzani, or we're heading towards the end, Prof. At the end of the day, this is all data. This is all information. It's so wide. It's so spread. How do I, as an individual that is not familiar with this, get in touch of this? So we've recently launched an information hub workshop at the University of Pretoria. The idea there is to, if a researcher works on something, that they input their information into the hub, so that when a farmer, a policymaker, an extension officer needs information about that particular topic, they can easily access the local relevant research through the hub. So one of the most important aspects of this hub, I spoke about diseases, climate variability earlier, is if there's a disease outbreak and a farmer sees it, the farmer can actually take a screenshot of the disease and post it onto the information hub. And as a result, we start seeing, we might get to a point where we start seeing a disease distribution of that particular disease as it spreads across the country, so that it might inform our management. This is not only a powerful tool for disease management, it might be powerful in terms of agronomic trade production as well. The tool will actually enable us to focus or collect our information into one central place. It's nothing new. This is a map of Brazil and South America. They have a similar concept for a rust disease on soybean, where they can actually have timely mitigative structures or protocols to deal with that rust disease before it reaches the inner parts of the production areas in the country. Grain SA, farmer profitability, farmer sustainability. If a farmer is profitable and sustainable, they are able to then continue producing season into season. This speaks to food security, speaks to employment, and we try to support them by giving them economic data. We try to support them by giving them research data. We also advocate for farmers, and this is where the policy engagement comes in. There is quite, I saw Nomke also had a picture with earthworms on it. This talks to good soil health. Compliance is key. We advocate for farmers. So when there's a new regulation that comes out, when there's a new anything that the farmer himself cannot tackle, we as Grain SA come in and represent the farmers. We represent them in industry conversation, the AMP. We represent them in trust or public consultation works. At the end of the day, we support farmer compliance. We ensure that the farmer is really well supported. And some of the regulations that we've recently participated in relating to SDG 2 and 13 include that of the climate change bill, the national determined contribution, the SADS carbon tax, AMP, and the NODs and the likes. This is particular for our farmer development, our PGP. We do try have mechanisms to ensure that our farmers are well supported. We understand some farmers come from a particularly disadvantaged background, and which is why transformation then forms key if we're going to want to ensure that the country has food to match its growing population. Transformation then also becomes key to ensure that everyone participates in the production of grains in the country, and we work closely. This not all our associates. I just needed to give you an example. We work closely with sector, different trusts, stand banks, maize trust, oilseed trust, as well as governments, where we support farmers all the way from smallholder or subsistence all the way to commercial. Obviously, I did say there are 700,000 farmers, and Grain SA can always only do so much, especially depending on the availability of the funds. At the end of the day, Chair, what we always aim is to ensure that a farmer is sustainable and profitable. And how we do that is we've broken down our research and our focus areas into consortia. What I spoke about today was that of climate resilience. We have crop improvement where there's breeding work being done. And we also have plant health, where crop protection, understanding of disease distribution, what diseases is out there and the impact of crop production is. We have that focus. All of that you'd have seen is so much information. So that's why I say data is a gold. But for us to be able to access the gold and make it meaningful, we know that gold is a mineral, raw material. It needs to be processed in order to be usable. So should our data. We try make it impactful, process it so that it's impactful, that it's accurate, and mostly timely, and accessible to all our farming communities. And that will enable the farmer to actually take proper decision in his work. Grain SA, I've shown you the research team only consists of 4 people, but the amount of work we've been able to do is because of this word here, collaboration. Collaboration has enabled us to do that. Collaboration with either the funders or collaboration with research communities and collaboration with other organizations as well. The work we do is not only limited to Grain SA, but is for the growth and the sustainability of the South African grain production. Thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, I am open for conversations long after this webinar, because we believe in collaborations. Thank you for the opportunity once again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gatle, for the informative presentation. We really enjoyed your presentation. Now I think we need to quickly move to question and answers. I've seen that there are some questions that have been raised on the chat, and it looks like most of them, if not all, are directed towards Prof. Mohammed. And he has responded to them. So perhaps what I could do is to say, mainly the questions were on organic fertilizer, its benefits and influence to the soil. There was also the issue of collaboration. It has been responded to. He has shared his contacts. And also Ruzani at assaf.org.za indicated that colleagues can email her for further collaboration if they want or any information they would need. However, it looks like a question which was related to GMOs by Ntombeka Tisani, as well as the question raised by Tando. I think those two, maybe Prof can respond to them. But still, if you feel like you might want to give a brief response to some of those raised questions, including the one on indigenous crops, you may do so. So over to you, Prof.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So yeah, I answer most of the question, and okay, the GM one, I think, I think as far as I know, I think Godfrey, I think you will be the one who can answer this question even more than me, okay? Because yeah, I think in South Africa, I think most of the maize that we produce is what's called is GM, okay? Except that the maize I know for production of starch, okay, is not a GM, is GM free. Okay, and the indigenous crop, I don't think any of them are GM yet. And I think that's a good opportunity to keep it. But if you want to increase yields and things like that, I think nowadays there are different technologies. Rather than we can talk about GM, there are gene editing technologies that is more acceptable than GM. I think this is what I will say. Again, this is not really my expertise, and this is really information that I read through during discussion. Godfrey, would you like to add, please? You are from Grain SA. You are more aware of these issues than I am.
Yes, I can. I'd like to add, but I wanted to show you a presentation of mine that I did. Um, but I recommend the readers maybe or listeners to go check a piece of paper that I wrote on the genetics and mechanization, the history of maize, uh, genetics and mechanization, and see what GMOs have done. So if we look at production, the history of our production, in first recorded 1920, we produced 600 kilograms of maize per hectare. On a rugby field or a soccer field, we produced only 600 kilograms. Since the introduction of fertilizers, chemicals, genetics, precision agriculture, we now produce 10 times more than we did 100 years ago. And where we've seen one of the major jumps is when we had the introduction of GMO. We've seen the jump of production go from 2 tons per hectare to around about 4.5 tons on national average. So the point I'm trying to make, in addition to that, we've seen when Grain SA have come into areas, rural areas, and they've started training farmers and introduction of GMOs like GM maize. We've seen farmers actually, because they're planting on small hectares, so they can actually be a lot more focused, have jumped from a 2-ton production per hectare all the way to 9 tons. So 4 times more since the training would have started. And as a result, the farmer can actually hold back some of the grain that he needs to or she needs to consume and actually start selling. So we're moving from a point of self-subsistence, sufficient, to a point where they start selling. So there's a new conversation that I think is important that I need to bring into the conversation, which our regulations have not really understood on how to address it, that of new breeding techniques, where we start looking at improving crops, not through genetically modified, but through gene manipulation. Our regulations have not really looked into it. But to answer your question in short, for us to remain globally competitive, GMOs is key. A lot of tests get done to ensure that they're suitable to environment. If you use GMO, it becomes drought tolerant. If you use GMO, you get to a point where you use less chemicals, and that also is good for the environment as well. So the conversation of GMO is absolutely key to ensuring that we remain self-sufficient as a country and actually also able to support other local or neighboring countries with sufficient food. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Godfrey, for the response in detail. And I think Tisani has been responded to, especially on the aspect of benefits of GMOs. Perhaps what she is more interested is in indigenous crops, looking into the nutritional benefits.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know if you can also
Yeah,
expand
I
on
can.
that.
Yes, I
All
can
right, thank
expand
you,
on that.
Prof. Thank you,
Okay.
Prof.
So there is a lot of indigenous crop out there, I think, which have a lot of potential, what's called nutritional and also health benefits. I think this is what we are also doing a lot at the university here, and other universities are also working, looking at a research-based evidence of these nutritional and health benefits. Just giving a quick example, like if you look at white bread, which is manufactured from white bread flour compared to a sorghum grain or a sorghum porridge, has far lower starch digestibility. Okay, that example I gave there. On the other hand, if you look at the legume grains now, there might be anti-nutritional factors there, like the phytate, the oxalate, that can reduce their nutritional benefit. But at the same time, I mean, as food scientists, we have found ways to reduce these anti-nutritional factors to further enhance the nutritional benefit of these grains. So to sum up, I mean, these indigenous crops, yes, they do have nutritional benefits that one need to look into more details so that we can have research-based evidence to provide these nutritional and health benefits so that we can increase the demand, and increasing the demand will increase the production of these indigenous crop. That's why I gave the example of quinoa at the beginning during my presentation. Hope this answers your
So,
question.
can I add on to what Prof is saying? I enjoyed his presentation as well, where he gave domesticated versus wild um, grains or crops. And what he said in his conversations, we would like to see a move from wild into domesticated. And one of the important things about that comment is if I am a farmer, we've been trying to do trials on different alternative crops, and pigeon pea is one of them. And what we've seen is you can plant it. It is drought resistant. It is a more hardy crop than your soybean. But when it comes to mechanization, you can only plant it on a small piece of land. So as things stands, most local crops are, are best suited for local, not local, for smallholder farming communities. I did say smallholder farming communities play a big role in food security. Absolutely, let's not get that right. But if we're going to get it into a commercial crop where it's actually traded globally, lots of research has to go into moving it from that wild into domesticated. And that's the work we are trying to get right with the sorghum cluster. That not only are we looking at it from a production point of view, but from a consumer point of view in terms of the VAT. If it gets taken off, it becomes a cheaper crop and it becomes accessible. We're also looking at it from a breeding point of view that when a farmer plants it, that they don't only harvest 1 ton, but they actually harvest a reasonable amount. And we're also looking at from a market, and this is why I enjoy Prof's conversations that he says when we look at crops, we must not look at it from a production point of view only. We must actually look at that entire value chain. Absolutely, the value chain becomes key. That once we produce an X amount, that we won't be sitting with suppliers that have no market access outside our borders, and then that's going to affect our prices unnecessarily. So I hope, yes, we are hoping to move with many of our crops, especially local crops, from a wild into a domesticated into a commercial crop.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you. Perhaps maybe audience can, or colleagues rather, would pardon me for the time, but just to extend a little bit, maybe 5 minutes to close. So maybe in 2 minutes time, I can give Prof just to give an insight into the two. I see there seem to be two burning questions. One of them was on the research that has been completed with the effect of microwave and infrared technology on table food and families. And the other one, perhaps you can tackle both.
Yes.
The other one is on, they are looking at evidence with regards to nutritional benefits between conventional and organically produced foods. So perhaps in 2 minutes, if you could just respond to those. Thank you, Prof.
Yes. I think in terms of the microwave and infrared, I think I did write the answers there in some of the comments. I will say that microwave, yes, it is a potential, but I think remember any technology, we had a technology readiness level. Okay, and then here, I mean, we can't just tell people, oh, you should use microwave and it's going to work. I think one need to do further research, like intervention studies, okay, where we can go to household and start working with them, the way they use the microwave and how, and look at the impact before we start really telling, yes, you should use microwave in that way, and this will impact on the child nutrition and health. I think that needs further research. And in terms of the infrared, I think this is more from a commercial or small and medium enterprise where they can use infrared type ovens that can change the nutritional properties or even the functional properties of the flour and the grain. I think this is what I would say. But microwave at household level do have a lot of what's called potential, but further research need to be done. And concerning the nutritional value of organically grown and conventionally grown crops, I think in terms of yield, it looked like organically grown crops. I think there has been research that done that this has been slightly lower yield because it's not very what's called well, I would say how you can say mechanized or well in terms of structured planting date, harvesting, and things like that, and post harvest. And in terms of the nutritional value, I think there hasn't been any concrete evidence as far as I know whether one is better than the other. Okay, but from a food safety point of view, I think that organically grown fruits and vegetables, one need to be more careful there, because organically grown means you are not spraying any pesticide or as efficient pesticide or insecticide. So especially the pesticide, if mold growth and things like that happen, this can impact on in terms of the mycotoxin. Okay, compared to organically grown, where you can't that you the way you control your especially your mold might be limited. I think that perhaps might be a different as far as I know. Okay, but in terms of nutritional value, I mean, there hasn't been any concrete evidence which one is better than the other. I think it depends on the varieties, the breed, the soil health, and all sort of other factors. Okay.
All right. No, thank you so much, Prof. I would like to indicate that there was a request from the participants with regards to the sharing of the presentations, and that has been responded to. The recording will be shared. And then in terms of collaboration, I saw also a request for Nomple to share your contacts. If you are willing, you can do so on the chat, or you can share through Ruzani. Many people would like to collaborate with you, especially with the issue of being practical as farmers and being inspirational and the passionate that is there. So yeah, we really appreciate your presentation. And then in closing, I would like to say that I think we have seen the synergy with regards to the presentations that we had today in terms of integrating farming with the aim of increasing productivity, adaptation to climate change and variability, as well as reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. There was a talk with regards to intercropping. I liked Grain SA with the issue of farmer support and bringing in the issue of resilience and innovation, and also by coining it to have a sustainable and profitable production for farmers. And thank you so much, Prof, as well with the information that you shared with us. I think you can see with the engagement that was generated thereof, and because we are concerned with our health, but at the same time, we want to increase food security in a household. I hope that quarter starch, quarter protein, and half vegetable and fruits plate will be able to achieve it as households and then at national level. So I would like to also indicate that there was an issue that was shared with regards to circular economy in terms of in diversification and use of manure into crop productivity. So that's for us for today. And me being in two lanes, firstly, on behalf of the presenters, I would like to thank ASSAf for giving us this platform to share with colleagues what we have, and also to open the door for collaboration is one of the objectives that was lined up, and I'm sure people will continue to engage even after this event. And then on the other side, I would like, on behalf of ASSAf, as well, to thank everybody for coming today. It's always good to learn together and to continue engaging, and the issue of empowerment and education that it was alluded to is always key, and to keep refreshing our minds and sharing the knowledge. I think together we'll be able to meet the goal of ensuring that everyone is food secure. Otherwise, thank you so much and have a beautiful day further.